We'd like to welcome everybody to the presentations that we're going to be doing today on sustainable and commercial vehicles in the market, and it's quite interesting in terms of some of the results that we've seen and we've had returned. So we're very much looking forward to that. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and for those who will be doing presentations. It's an exciting market and it's developing very fast. Next slide, please. So I'm John Smith. I'm the Head of Sustainable Infrastructure and Facility Management from HUST, and I'm Vice Chair of the ALICE Efficient and Low Emissions Assets and Energy. So we'll be doing today vehicles and infrastructure availability will be presented by Thomas Fabian, Commercial Vehicles Director at ACEA. The release of zero emission vehicles to market analysis done with ENTRANCE project will be done by Antonio Invito, Innovation and Business Analyst at Kiotech P&O, and I'll be doing the presentation on low emission assets and energy. The launch of the purchase negotiation support by ENTRANCE will be supported by Fernando as well. So next slide, please. So I'm to call on, call on the first presenter there, please, just to start the presentation.
Good morning. Thanks very much. Good morning, John. Good morning, Fernando. Thanks very much for the introduction, and most of all for the invitation, of course, to this this session here. My name is Thomas Fabian. I'm Director of Commercial Vehicles with ACEA. I hope you can see the presentation and hear me clearly. So, very good. And I would like to share today a few remarks with respect to decarbonizing road transport, especially freight road transport, of course, and our views on and intel on vehicles and infrastructure availability. So without further ado, let's start. So as you're all aware, decarbonizing road transport is usually seen as a particularly difficult endeavor, because it's all about numbers. It has to make sense from a business perspective. So it has to, using the low and zero emission vehicles, has to become a commercially viable business for those who operate them. And to get the TCOs right here and all the ingredients in place is a tricky endeavor. But, and that's one of the key messages here, the vehicles will not be the bottleneck of this. We have basically three factors that we see as key ingredients for decarbonizing road transport. One is, of course, the vehicles, functional, reliable, and efficient vehicles. We will not get anywhere if we don't have those. And our view on this is very clearly that if we want to decarbonize road transport or the European economy at large by 2050, then the last fossil fuel-powered vehicle will have to be or can be sold in the 2040 range at the latest. The earlier, the better, of course. But at the same time, it's not only about the vehicles, of course. And this is this picture here shall show you that this is these three factors are interdependent. They need to be in place at the same time. And it's not so much a chicken. It used to be a chicken and egg issue, and to some extent it still is. But we're beginning to overcome the thresholds of whatever you like, the egg or the chicken. So vehicles are becoming available rapidly here. But without the other two factors, this is not going to get us anywhere. So the second factor here is we need a suitable infrastructure, of course, charging and refueling infrastructure. The understanding is that we need to switch to new powertrain technologies, zero emission powertrain technologies. And to enable the operation of those vehicles, we need to roll out the infrastructure. And at the same time, we also need to ensure that whatever the energy carriers are, all of them basically, are being decarbonized at the same time. This makes it so challenging because we, of course, need the clean electricity, green hydrogen, and we also at the same time need a rapid decarbonization of the fuels, because I think everybody agrees that this transition is not happening with the flip of a switch. It is a transition in a sector, and it will take a few years. It can be fast, but how fast it is largely depends on factors outside the manufacturer's control. And the third factor here is obviously when it's all about numbers, then it is very clear transport operators will only invest in these vehicles and choose these vehicles if they are the better choice than the conventional ones. So they have to become, we have to set the framework conditions right so that they become the best option, the preferred choice of transport operators. And for this is not happening by itself, especially not at the pace that this transition is needed. So that's why we need an enabling policy framework to shift the key cost factors of this. Now, our view on what are the technologies here? Our view on this is very clear. We need to, today, as you know, 95% of the market share is dominated by fossil diesel. And however much we like it and enjoy the fact that we also have alternative fuels like LNG or HVO in the market, which is great, there are still they're only a fraction of a minor fraction of today's powertrain technologies. And the challenge we're facing is that we need to shift the backbone of road transport away from fossil diesel to zero emission powertrain technologies, and that's largely mainly battery electric vehicles and hydrogen powered vehicles. As I said before, the pace of this transition, and this is indicated here by the S curve, or two possible scenarios, if you like. This can happen fairly quickly if all the ingredients, all the factors that I mentioned before are in place in time. But it can also, if one of the factors remains a bottleneck, a barrier to the transition, then it can easily take more time. We also, and this is indicated by the color grading in the background, we also believe that, as I said, this is about a transition. It's not happening overnight. Of course, as much as we would like everyone to invest in the available zero-emission vehicles as fast as possible, we also see that in different applications over the years, the availability of the enabling conditions, as we call them, is different. So this will evolve. One of the bottlenecks that we see is the charging infrastructure, and of course, depending on the different applications, the cost parity, which is an important factor here. Now, as I said in the beginning, vehicles will not be the bottleneck, and we are already seeing a range of zero-emission vehicles becoming available. This is starting with the key technology, battery electric vehicles. But I sometimes, and all manufacturers basically are either already have started serious production of these vehicles or are about to start serious production soon. So we're talking about the next 1 to 3 years when a full range, increasingly broader range of zero-emission vehicles will become available. As I said, battery electric first and foremost, and hydrogen, followed by hydrogen-powered vehicles soon thereafter. And the market uptake of those vehicles will depend on the state of the enabling conditions, mainly first and foremost the charging infrastructure in the case of the battery electric vehicles. Now, with respect to policymakers, we're also, let me just send this signal here, we're also very clear in our messages that we were in the process of revising the current regulation for CO2 emission standards for heavy-duty vehicle manufacturers. And the current target that is set already for 2030, minus 30%, requires manufacturers to put several hundred thousands of zero emission vehicles on the market within the next 5 to 7 years. So the ambition that is in the current regulation framework is already extremely challenging, but we're on the way of facing probably a more stringent framework, which requires an additional efforts on the enabling conditions. So we think that the target levels here, the ambition level that are being set for 2030, should be now fixed. We think there should not be an interim target before 2030, because this is a long-term, medium to long-term business. We also, and I know this may not in all cases be particularly popular, but we also are convinced that it is nothing more than a political symbol to fight about a 100% target at this point in time. And a phase-out date of for all vehicle groups, it doesn't make sense at this point in time. Because of the state of the enabling conditions, namely TCO parity and the state of the infrastructure. It would not increase the pace or the ambition or the confidence of any of the market actors in bringing this forward. I'm not saying that we're fighting for the last internal combustion engine till the last drop. Not at all. What we are fighting for is we want to enable the market to absorb the new powertrain vehicles, which are becoming available now. And that's why, and that's the second part of the set of messages here. The good news is vehicles are available. The bad news is they are more expensive in upfront investment costs than the conventional powertrain vehicles. And this will not change significantly anytime soon. So what we need is a strong set of push and pull measures on all for all stakeholders here, basically, to adopt and adjust to the new vehicles. And with respect to transport operators, it means we need a clear and strong set of support measures that enables and encourages everyone to invest in these new vehicles. Now, and as I said, just to go briefly over this here, going fossil free and decarbonizing this sector requires more than just electrification of the vehicles. We need a close cooperation between all stakeholders to enable the fossil free transportation system and the infrastructure industry. And we're convinced that with all ambition that to make the zero emission powertrain technologies the backbone of road freight transport, we continue to believe that this, as I said, will be a transition. So the internal combustion engine will have to play an important role for certain applications, and that's why we are convinced that the decarbonization of all energy carriers is so crucial. It will take time. Once the enabling conditions are in place, so once the TCO parity is in an increasingly wider range of applications is reached, then again, why would anyone want to continue running or continue investing in conventional diesel-powered vehicles? So that's why we need to set the framework right. And one of the key elements of this framework, obviously, is the charging infrastructure and refueling infrastructure. The charging infrastructure differs significantly for heavy-duty vehicles compared to passenger cars. So charging infrastructure with respect to the location of the charging and refueling stations, but also with respect to space requirements, the minimum output levels that we see are necessary. What we basically need to do is we need to a large majority of the vehicles, perhaps 30-40% or so of the applications will be able to operate in the early stages based on depot charging. So everyone who invests in a battery electric truck will want to have a charger at the home base. perhaps complemented with opportunity charging at the destination. But in order to increase the flexibility of the use and really expand the outreach, if you want, for these vehicles, for the new powertrain technologies, we need publicly accessible charging infrastructure that is suitable for trucks, and we need to utilize the rest and driving and resting times that are required, the 45 minutes break that the drivers are required to take every 4 or so hours. And this is the time when we need to recharge the vehicles for the next 400 or so kilometers range. This will so the widespread adoption of these vehicles in a large range of the markets will require the deployment of truck suitable charging infrastructure based on the megawatt charging system. We have a good understanding of what we think we need as minimum requirements, and that you see here is on the right side in green, with respect to the charging infrastructure for the 10T core network and the comprehensive network. And to be honest, sometimes these numbers are fairly scary. They're scarily high, actually, because here we are talking already by 25, in our view, what will be needed of 5 megawatts per charging pool, with at least 4 350 kilowatt chargers and 4 800 kilowatt chargers, or the MCS chargers. And this is only the start of it. Eventually, we had this in a different setting earlier this week. We need to every safe and secure truck parking area equipped with suitable charging infrastructure. Now, and this brings me to my last point here. The question is where to start. Where do we start this? It's a transition, but we need to start somewhere, of course. And as I said, a high power fast charging network is needed. We looked at fleet management data of all truck manufacturers, and had followed about 400,000 trucks over a period of about 12 months, identified roughly 750,000 locations where the trucks stop today. And the basic assumption is that operators, of course, will not want to change the way that they're using the vehicles. So they will just want to continue operating them as they're operating the diesel trucks today. So the locations where the trucks stop today seem to be prime candidates for rolling out the charging infrastructure. And our conclusions, you will find this on the ASEA website, are that already by 27, so 5 years or so, we need about all the 10% top utilized locations to be equipped with some sort of suitable infrastructure. And here 10% sounds like a very modest figure, but here we are talking already about 3,000 locations across Europe, which is roughly covers about 50% of all stops. The minimum network needs to be fully operational no later than 2030. And as I said in the beginning, this will have to start with the regional locations and urban nodes by 25, but the focus should be for truck suitable charging on the MCS standard. And all of what I said here so far is focused on the charging side. But, and that's the question I sometimes ask, does anyone actually believe that in 27, 28, 29, the charging infrastructure suitable for heavy duty vehicles will not be an issue any longer? So it will not be considered a bottleneck. Is this sounds like a very ambitious dream, if you want. So we also need to think about very clearly about hydrogen, which does have an infrastructure requirements, of course. But that's why we're also saying, but there are a less dense network of hydrogen refueling infrastructures will be needed, which is why we're also saying hydrogen offers certain advantages, benefits, and that's why we need to keep this technology in the focus as well for the rollout, for the decarbonization of the sector. So it is not either or, it is both. And just to close this, you will find this on the ASEA website. We looked at the locations, as I mentioned, where to start, and you can you will find there on the ASEA website zoomable maps, so you can really zoom into those maps down to a 200 meter level, where the locations are in the different countries. Here for the Netherlands, we're talking, for example, the top 5% locations, top 10% locations, and eventually the top 50% locations, which this is the density, if you want, of the network that we will eventually need to see. And you will find this for all countries that we looked at. And that brings me to the last point here, conclusions. Decarbonizing road transport requires more than just the CO2 standards for vehicle manufacturers. Of course, it requires zero-emission vehicles. They're coming in large numbers at the moment. It also requires at the same time charging and refueling infrastructure to be rolled out rapidly, and cost parity. And I'm happy to discuss this. Cost parity is not happening by itself. It requires political intervention, the right policy framework, which systematically disincentivizes the use of fossil fuels and incentivizes the market uptake of the zero-emission vehicles. And all of this, of course, needs to be in a nicely and coherent packaged policy framework that enables and encourages everyone to pull in the same direction and to support the transition. Thank you very much. Happy to take your questions.
Yeah, I see some questions in the chat. Do you go over it? Do you want me to go over them?
Happy to go over this. Would 100% target not provide the confidence to the OEMs on the needed change? No, it does not, because what we're seeing is that the manufacturers are investing heavily in making the vehicles available. And I'm just going back to this not very beautiful but long list of vehicles that are available or are becoming available. The question is, sometimes we hear this, of course, from newcomers in the market. We should go 100% right away. And I always respond, it's a lot easier to electrify 100% of a niche market if you have one product than to electrify the full range of the market that we're facing today. So no, it doesn't require any more focus on manufacturers. It requires the enabling conditions and that's namely the infrastructure and support measures to facilitate and encourage operators to overcome. Of course, there are risks associated with new technologies. The maps are in the chat as well. Thanks, Fernando. And then I see a question regarding financing. Yes, of course, we don't. The vehicle manufacturers are working with financing and leasing companies to develop new models, because of course we don't want the vehicles. We're not going to reach our targets nor the larger decarbonization targets if we focus on showroom models. So we don't want any one of the operators to just invest in a green vehicle to show them. They really need to be the better choice for doing daily business. And this is the hard part, and that's why we need to tackle the question of how to really close the TCO gap that we see will remain for a while. And even if, I mean, the first X%, 10, 20, 50, 30% of the market may perhaps relatively easily be able to adopt the new vehicles and invest in them. But we also, you know better than I, we have the structure of the operators market is fairly it's fairly fragmented, right? We have many companies out there who are subcontracting to others, and eventually we need to decarbonizing the whole range of the market. Everyone, we need to reach down to or be able to allow them, the ones that own 5 or 10 trucks, to invest in these vehicles, and even for them to make this the better choice. And the last question, if I see this correctly here, is about the infrastructure. 45 to 60-minute break every 5 hours could hurt the TCO. Well, I would say if you look at the driving and resting times requirements, the vehicles already have to stop every 4 or so hours for a certain, because of the drivers. And this is the time that we need to that we need to recharge the vehicles. And 45 minutes, if we invest in megawatt charging, and this is what will happen over the next 1 to 3 years, where it will start, then we will of course be able to. It doesn't necessarily have to be 45 minutes. It can be 30 minutes if everything is right. But again, this is pointing out that we are here in this case not talking about the vehicles or the vehicle manufacturers, but rather about the infrastructure availability, and not only the right and suitable truck charger, but also the availability of the 24/7 of the energy, of the electricity, but also of the charging point itself. And back again, I mean, this is not only about charging infrastructure. Hydrogen-powered vehicles are coming as well, and they have a shorter refueling time.
Yes, I had a question, Captain Touring Shevko. So for me, the issue on battery electric truck is both on the charging points, and so the infrastructure, you're right, but also on what are the OEMs developing, meaning the trucks need to be able to get the full charge, because now most of them are kept, at 200 something kilowatt per hour in terms of charging that they can handle.
Yeah, the what is happening is, and I mentioned the MCS standard, megawatt charging system standard. This is in the final stages of being agreed. So it will be final at the very latest mid-24. But then it, as far as I know, it also everyone in the industry is aiming for earlier, for mid-23 already. But then it will take a bit of time also to agree on the just the administrative process. And for the megawatt charging system, we're talking about 1 megawatt at least,
Yep.
And this goes up to a lot more. I wouldn't dare saying that the current CCS for heavy duty vehicles is going to disappear. But of course, manufacturers will focus on the MCS to ensure flexibility in operation. So that's why we're also saying focus on the MCS for the charging infrastructure. And then vehicles will not, how do you say, the electric ingredients of the inner workings of the vehicles will not be the issue in that respect. It will again be the availability of the charging stations and their accessibility. And I see here a question, 120,000 additional zero-emission vehicles will be needed by 2030 per year in order to be Paris compliant. This brings us back to this slide here. The question is indeed, are operators able to switch quickly enough? And this is not finger pointing or blaming. But will the ingredients, will the enabling conditions that allow operators to invest and operate these vehicles on the scale of 120,000 additional zero-emission vehicles per year, will this be possible by the end of the decade? And it's not about 2029, it needs to start now. And this is the question we're asking ourselves, and we're asking anyone out there to look not only at the vehicle manufacturers here. This is about collaborating and shifting the entire the transport and logistics systems to the new zero-emission powertrain technologies, and this requires a shift of many stakeholders. So, what if the infrastructure availability remains an issue 6, 7, 5, 8 years down the line? Will we simply sit back and say, okay, we can't meet Paris targets? That's probably
Thomas,
not an option.
Thomas, sorry to interrupt you. Maybe to further elaborate on those points would be maybe to do that through the chat. Would probably be the best way. Sorry, it's just we're tight for time. I think everybody's very interested in this and how this is going to develop. So, with no more to do, I call on Antonia to share on the market analysis that they've performed. If you could, Antonio.
Yes. Could you please allow me to share my screen? Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you everyone for attending. My name is Antonio Invito, and I am a business and innovation analyst at PNO, South PNO. For starting, I will do a brief presentation of my company, and then I will show you some data resulting from the analysis. PNO Consultant is an established market leader in grant and innovation consultancy. We have been active for more than 35 years, growing from being a startup in the Netherlands, and now we are a multinational group with offices in 8 countries in Western Europe, and we are more than 400 employees, with most of which with technical and financial background. We work with a pan-European network of partners and clients covering all Europe. The group is composed of multiple labels, brands, covering strategic innovative sector from energy and mobility to life sciences and education, etc. We also leverage on IT developers to support our strategic services and developing our own innovation management intelligent tools. And more specifically, the R&D advisory team is part of Ciaotech, the Italian brand of PNO. We are a dedicated unit established in Italy and supporting the whole group. We are composed of innovation and business analysts, expert innovation management, design thinking, business modeling, etc. We cover the whole innovation cycle with a set of specific services such as the market research and innovation scouting, which helped us to carry out this analysis. This market research has been carried out within the work package number 3 of the ENTRANCE project in collaboration and on behalf of Alice. The scope was to identify the zero-emission, long-haul and urban freight transportation. A first-step approach based on multiple databases has led us to a catalog, which is provided as an Excel file. And the market intelligence has started from a free desktop search, consulting some available databases, such as the Drive to Zero's ZT tool, and also the various manufacturer websites. Then we used some PNO's proprietary and licensed tools, such as WISB, for example, for finding additional and manufacturers based on their activity in R&D projects in and around Europe. Subsequently, an in-depth analysis of the selected vehicle has been carried out to detail their technical properties and check their market availability and readiness to date. Finally, also a contact search for each vehicle has been done, trying to find people that were involved in their development. Yes, here we can see in a nutshell that we found more or less 130 different vehicles model by 74 different manufacturers. More than 50% are models already on the market, while the other half is close to commercialization or in production, where the next commercialization category identify those vehicles that will be on the market within 2 years. For each of them, we have collected some information, including the power supply, the weight expressed in tons, the payload, the chassis body type, battery size, charging time, and range availability, for example. Here in the graph on the right, we can see that the largest manufacturing is in the United States, while Germany, Netherlands, and Sweden are the top three in Europe. The 75% of the identified models are trucks, and more than the 75% are battery electrical vehicles. These slides show the focus on availability in Europe. In Europe, we have identified 71 different models available, provided by 45 different manufacturers. Of these, 45 models are already on the market, so already delivered to customers. 9 are next to commercialization, so models already available to order or marketable within 2 years. 4 models are in production and 6 are next to be produced. 7 of the identified models have been presented or designed, but there has been no update, so we have collocated them in the uncertain status category. The chart on the right maps the manufacturer based on the maximum vehicle weight identified and the year of entry into the market. This slide shows the focus on the 55 trucks identified for the European market. Of these 55 trucks, 40 models are already on the market or next to commercialization. On the left, we have identified the trucks per size, per gross vehicle weight, and almost the 50% of the models are below the 19 tons. While on the right, we can see a chart that describes the already available or next to commercialization identified models in Europe per size and per autonomy range. We can see that the range capacity here are expressed between the 100 and 800 kilometers, but it should be noted that these vehicles are all on the market or next to commercialization. We can anticipate that if we look at the models in production or next to production phase expressed in our Excel, the range can extend topic camp also 1000 kilometers. These slides show the already available or next commercialization identified models, identified trucks in Europe, expressed per maximum battery size, expressed in kilowatt per hours, and minimum charging time expressed in hours. We have to say that the minimum charging time here specified for each vehicle is related to the battery size considered, as more vehicles mentioned in the chart have different battery configurations, consequently also different charging times. In a light blue, you can see the model that go on with fuel cell, but in a dark blue, the battery electrical trucks models available or next to commercialization for the European market. This chart instead show the trucks per minimum charging time and range extension. Also in this case, the maximum range specified per each vehicle in the chart is related to the minimum charging time necessary to cover the mentioned kilometers. You can see, for example, the differences between the trucks that have more configuration, such as the Quentron Q-Heavy of the Teva BEV and Teva Rex, in the fuel cell version has a range extension higher than the battery version. Here we propose some examples of the trucks identified, expressed such as the shift of the different models. The first truck that we provide you is the CF Electric of DAF that can weigh up to the 37 tons. These trucks have, for example, a range extension of 200 kilometers and a fast charging of 30 minutes. The truck is already on the market. It was released in 2019 in Italy for Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany markets, and successfully it is expanded also in other European countries. A second example can be the Hyzon IMAX series. That is a fuel cell electric truck that can weigh up to 70 tons. He needs only 8 minutes for refueling in hydrogen and has a range extension of 400 kilometers. Also, this model is on the market, as at least 20 trucks are going to be delivered by the end of this year. The models, other model can be ordered. Also, if the quantity available are not clear on the websites, on the manufacturer websites. Another example that we propose is Mercedes-Benz E-Actros, that is a battery electric truck. It has a maximum weight of 40 tons. And also this truck has a range extension of 400 kilometers. The series production of this truck started in October 2021 and already delivered some trucks for German clients. The next example is the Nikola Tre fuel cell electric truck that can weigh up to 40 tons, and its range extension is up to 800 kilometers with a charging time of 45 minutes. One previous battery electric version is already available only in the North America market since the 2021, while the fuel cell version is scheduled for entering the European market in 2024. The production has started last year in Germany in collaboration with Iveco. The next example is the Quantron Heavy that has a double configuration both in battery and fuel cell. And we can see that the fuel cell version has a higher range extension until to 700 kilometers. The fuel cell electric truck will be available from the second quarter of the 2023, but it's not clear if the battery version is already available for sale or if this will be marketed shortly by the end of this year. Another example is the L-Series of Scania. It has a range extension of 250 kilometers. The truck is already on the market. Some trucks already delivered in Norway and in Sweden. Enright has ordered a high number of trucks that will be delivered between the second half of this year and the beginning of the 2023. Another example is the Teva. Also, this truck have a double configuration, both in battery and fuel cell. The fuel cell configuration has a range extension of the 500 kilometers. The truck's next commercialization as the battery electric vehicle model can be delivered in the quarter 3 of this year, while the range extension models deliveries are scheduled for the different period between the 2023 and 2024 based on the different weight of the truck, but all models are already reservable. The last example that we provide you is the Volvo FM Electric. That is a battery electric vehicle. It can weigh up to 44 tons. The range extension is up to the 380 kilometers. The truck is in production, such as the serial production will start in this autumn and gradually ramp up, but some already trucks been ordered by DHL and the FDS. To conclude the presentation, yes, this is the script of the registration to the entrance platform, and now we can give you the link to download the Excel also in this platform. Maybe here Janet can explain better than me how is the process to download the Excel. What is the link? Yes, so I want to thank you everybody for your attention, and happy to answer your question if you have any.
Antonio, perhaps you can just on the last piece, slide 18, you were talking about trucks and you've gone to speak about logging in. Maybe you can just explain what people will see when they log into
Yes.
into the database.
Here.
That's one there, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you could just explain to people what's in that full database.
Yes, on the entrance platform, you can find the entire Excel file that contain our market analysis with the list of all the vehicles that we find, this with the properties of the different vehicles. So I think that maybe Janet, can you provide the right link to download the file or not yet?
Yes, yes. Well, they're still uploading it, but however, I can very easily explain what is needed in order to enter. So really, what you have to do, I just put the official link here in the chat. So you have the link to the project website as such. When you get into this page, you have on the upper right corner a small option that says sign up. So when you press that is when you have the possibility to get into here. We do not request a lot of information, but it is necessary to sign up in order to access. We won't be doing any email bombings, very important to mention. It's simply to know who has actually have access to the information that we upload there. The Excel sheet that Antonia has mentioned will be uploaded there throughout the day of today, so I can promise for sure that it will be available tomorrow morning. We're hoping it will be available within the next hour, but unfortunately I cannot assure this at this very moment. When you open, when you enter the platform, I'm not sure, unfortunately, as I'm not a speaker, I cannot share my screen, but when you register and enter the platform, you have an option that is called Knowledge Hub. And within the Knowledge Hub, you have a document repository. And that's actually I can actually share now. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yes, I could see somebody gave me access. Okay, can you actually see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is when you go into the initial website of the project, and as you may see up here, you have the option for signing up. When you press the signing up, mine unfortunately it opens automatic. It opens automatically, as I'm obviously as project coordinator for this project. I've signed up quite some time ago, and then when you enter here, you have different options of information that you can access. You can access information. This is more for the solution providers. They will have access regarding potential demand for solutions that would fit with their products. You have supply, which is information about the patents that's currently already available on the market, and also innovative solutions that are being generated in Europe currently. You have finance, where you have a database of all European and national funding programs that's currently available, and also alternative sources of finance, including also possibilities for private finance. And then you have the Knowledge Hub, where you have examples of best practices of implementation of innovative solutions for the transport and mobility sector, legislation that's currently applicable on a European level, collaboration opportunities, training videos for trainings that we have done previously, and then you have here document repository. And this is where we will actually have available the Excel sheet. Okay, so I can send you already here, and as Fernando is saying, he will also ensure to send the link by email. But when you get into the document repository, it's really where you will be able to access the information. Of course, in case you have any doubts or questions, don't hesitate to contact us for any advice.
Okay, thanks very much. Antonio, do you have any there's a few questions there, but I think
Yeah.
with the time that's due to us, I think you can answer them on if you could answer them on the chat, that would be great. And Pablo, I think I'm next, so I'll kick into my presentation. Yes.
Yes. In the meanwhile, I show you the Excel file in which the market analysis is carried out. Okay. Can you see my screen? Yes. I
Yes,
tried
we
to
can.
answer some. Okay. I tried to answer some questions in the chat related mainly on the number of available models and trucks. So you can see the Excel file. These news are all on this file, but for the most of model identifiers, there are no info about the quantity available. But for any there are, and there are all in the section of comments on the right of the table here. Actual situation of the vehicles and comments explain all the news about the vehicles, for some also the quantity available, also the quantity already sold. For example, these vehicles for these vehicles are already ordered 200 units. Is the yes is the BID class 6F, for example, but this is all only available for North European markets. For some European available truck, we can see, yes, maybe we see that for DAF in UK are already being contracted the supply of 20 trucks that are entering service this year, for example. There are all of this info on this file, and for such model, you can also see the available quantity, but for the most of them, the info is not available.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Antonio. Pablo,
Yeah.
maybe if we can go. I'd just like to say, Antonio, I think you've done an excellent presentation. You've given people a very clear view of what's happening in the market. Unfortunately, you will see in our presentation that the OEMs
Yeah.
weren't as forthcoming in terms of the information that you've received. I think for people here, your presentation on that Excel spreadsheet that you've demonstrated is a mine of information. So I'd like to thank you on that. So that's excellent.
Thank you very
Um,
much.
And sorry, I'll commence. We were doing this as a sustainable commercial vehicle survey. Uh, sorry, just looking. Yes, sorry, we were doing a commercial vehicle survey, and what we did was we had three aspects of the survey, which was three questions, which was to determine the valuable options for zero emissions and sustainable commercial vehicles, develop a roadmap which would clearly identify the feasible options for zero emissions and sustainable commercial vehicles for Alice members, and identify timelines of availability for zero emissions and sustainable commercial vehicles. So what we were trying to do was trying to see where the manufacturers would see where they were coming to market. The survey was broken into three parts. Part 1 related to heavy commercial vehicles, HCVs. Part 2 was related to light commercial vehicles, LCVs, and it included some additional questions. Some sample of the questions are related to each are given there. I won't reiterate the questions, but we spent quite a bit of time trying to identify questions that were relevant and we thought were relevant to the market. And the likes of some of the key questions we would have thought was the cost difference to the internal combustion engines. We thought that was a viable question. And the availability of right and left hand drive, which would be very important for us who are in, say, the English world, where we drive on the right side of the road rather than the wrong side of the road. Next slide there, please. So the survey response that was sent to 37 OEMs, and we received 5 responses. So we felt that the lack of response was a response. Now, we spoke to 1 or 2 of the OEMs just to follow up as into why they hadn't responded, and a lot of the case it was they felt that the information was deemed very commercially sensitive. They didn't want to give their competitors a look at and see what they were doing, or seeing where they were expanding and coming to market with commercial offering. One of the OEMs spoke to us and told us that the plants hadn't been manufactured yet to deliver the vehicles in any great quantity. So we took what we've taken is that there's the lack of response is actually a response from the OEMs. One of the 5 responses we received, only one organisation provided answer to all 3 parts. One of the OEMs provided contact information and did not fill in all the parts, and this is believed to be an error, and we've reached out to them to correct the information, which we'll correct in the following presentation when we get it. And the following sections refer to the 4 respondents we've received. Next slide. So the survey responses was part 1 on the HCVs. Was answered by 3 of the 4 respondents. This is because one of the respondents did not produce HCVs, nor did they plan to. In total, there were 9 vehicles. Of the 9 vehicles, there were 7 battery electric vehicles, and 1 fuel cell electric vehicle, and 1 hydrogen internal combustion engine. None of the vehicles listed in the serial production, and no respondent to a percentage cost difference of the vehicles compared to the internal combustion engine. Cost is a huge factor in deciding this. It's a lot of the companies that we would feel that are going to acquire the electric vehicles are doing so out of altruistic means. It's certainly not in going down into the market. So you get the likes of the big fleets potentially buying some electric vehicles, where I think the average fleet size in Europe of a fleet company is about 5 vehicles. They're not in this market at this point in time. So you can see there the results that we're seeing, and then the dates that we're seeing that's coming to market. Next slide, please. So similarly to the HCVs, the LCVs was answered by 2 of the 4 respondents. There was 7 vehicles listed, 6 BEVs and 1 FCEV. The FCV was listed in part 3 of the survey, but it's been summarised in this section. All of the vehicles listed will be in production by the end of 2022, and the percentage cost distance to ICE equivalent was provided by 4 vehicles. Trials and appraisals are available at the end of 2022. For the 3.5 tonne BEV van and the 4.251 BEV vans, those vehicles were particularly limited to the UK. None of the vehicles listed are in serial production, and no respondents offered a percentage cost difference compared to the internal combustion engines to the equivalent. So maybe next slide there, Papa. So this gave you the survey. You can see that the BEV van, there's the 250k is the range. It would be similar to what Antonio was saying. The range somewhere, most of these vehicles, somewhere between 200 and 400 kilometers. And we're seeing that we're getting some in production, and the cost equivalent in some of them is in the order of 55 to or 45 to 50 to 70%. So there's quite a premium on these vehicles. Next slide, please. So the final survey response was to part 3, the additional question, and was answered by all 4 respondents, and the table below indicates which questions were answered or left blank or cannot give details or may threaten. We can't give the details as what we committed to the anonymity of the respondents in terms of the survey. We committed that the survey would be confidential to the respondents. In other words, we share the information, but not share who's providing that information. So we felt that the territories and everything else that they were all operating within Europe, which was great, and so we were looking at the only one was going to restrict itself to its current market. So we feel that there's in this sense that the market is expanding, it's growing. I think Antonio's is really the leading research in this area, and while the OEMs are working very hard, they're not in the market in terms of commercial production. They will produce them, but they're not in that area. That's kind of a gut feeling, more based on anecdotal evidence, but certainly Antonio's piece is an excellent piece of work. Next slide, please. So we will keep this activity open, and we will continue communication with the OEMs. Those OEMs that respond to our survey have been and will be invited to present to ANA's members in future dates, and we had planned to review the infrastructure to zero emission vehicles. However, we now believe that this is premature, and we'll review the infrastructure at a later date. We feel that the infrastructure, I think Tomas's presentation about the infrastructure and how that was going to have to grow, I don't think it's there yet, and we feel that we will have a look at that and see how that is developing later. Next slide, please. And that's just to say thank you, and thank you for everybody. Has anybody any questions? Oh, okay. Fernando, could you launch your presentation, please?
Can you see my presentation? I think so. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Jon, for the introduction, and also for the rest of the speakers for the insightful presentations. And I'm the last, and I think we have go through a very holistic overview on the situation, and based on this, we would like really to get your input and your feedback. So my presentation will actually start by asking you to join Slido, and I prepared 3 questions that will be very helpful for us. So here you have the way you can enter into Slido, and actually my presentation will be complementing the work on the offer side. In ALICE, we really want to create a framework supported by ENTRANCE project, really to get also to the demand and trying to, by that, accelerate all this process that was greatly explained by Thomas. So I think here there are a lot of interdependencies between vehicles, infrastructure, TCOs, opportunities, and framework conditions. And all these interdependencies are preventing us to advance quite fast. So then we are trying, at least with the support of ENTRANCE, really trying to address and create the framework or support creating the framework for those interdependencies to make this advance faster. So before going into that very short presentation on my side, please go to the Slido, and here I also sharing in the chat the link, so then you can have direct access. And in the Slido, I see you are already answering the questions. I'm going to show you them in a second. So then the question is, first question is, I see we have in the audience plenty of logistics service providers, shippers, and transportation carriers. So first question is directed to this, and so then if you plan to purchase or use, in case you are a shipper of zero emission trucks, or you are freight forwarder, so then you are suggesting your customers. Okay, that's quite interesting. The answer, I don't see more. So I see people going forward fast and others they don't know. Then the next question is, what's your preferred technology for heavy duty vehicles and medium long distances operations decarbonization? Okay, that's a good signal, but still I see some of you are not answering. When you say, sir, other, I guess it's other fuels, I guess, but otherwise you can include what you mean in the chat in GoToMeeting, or just share this private message. Okay, perfect. Let's move on. We get a bit more. Okay. And then the last question is, we went through them over the webinar, and what are the barriers that keep you from buying your preferred zero emission vehicle? And again, there are 5 options. When you say other, you can absolutely, if you share those over the chat, if you want to everybody, or otherwise in private, so then we can get this for the summary of the webinar in anonymized way. Okay, thank you so much for the input. I think this is also somehow a little bit against of what it was introduced on. Yeah, now it's really for most of you are struggling with the business model. That is what essentially we say always in Alice, that it's not only the recharging, refilling infrastructure or the availability of vehicles. These vehicles are completely different. How to get them into actual operations, how to really get the business model out of it, it's really challenging, and probably it's not getting so much attention as the other 2 points. That's reassuring our point of view, and really happy to keep working on that. So I don't see more answers, so then I move on to my 2 slides presentation. Actually, going into the details, why are we doing this is, as I said before, we need to accelerate adoption of zero emission vehicles, and this is for those ones I know, operators that are starting to work with this type of trucks. It's an important learning curve in terms of assigning to routes, in understanding how they can perform, which routes, everything dealing with the truck drivers, everything dealing also with understanding how, or the variability of the range, and many other things, also including how they can manage this type of vehicles in the current transportation management system. So that there is a lot of there that it's important. So then we need to go into that. We see there is a very fragmented offer and demand this stage, and in particular on the offer, solutions are not available. So then for the users, the tracking companies, the operators, are sometimes difficult to access them, to test them, to get them, and to understand how they can better work with these new types of vehicles. And also from the supply side, there is, of course, it's really difficult to find big orders from any type of operator. And most of the companies willing to operate these trucks are at the moment trying to acquire 1-2 units, so then they can start working with them, testing them, and getting trust into them, so then they can really work. But when we talk with the supply side, that it's still now investing in mass production, they say we cannot process single units orders at this stage in many cases. In some cases when they are in the market, of course, but when they are in pre-market series, they don't really want to hear about this, more willing to have that. It's also true, as Thomas said, that in some cases it's more showcasing those vehicles that are really willing to work with them. So then this is some elements that we really want to work, and for that we work with the offer side, as we have seen in this seminar, but we also want to work on the demand side. And actually through the ENTRANCE project, we cover the supply side, the demand side, so then we understand the potential buyers of these vehicles, and we are now issuing a new survey on that, and really working with those who are willing to join forces to go on purchase aggregation, and really trying to get that aggregation towards the OEMs, but also on finance private investors and public funding instruments through the project. And this is my last slide. So then how you can get further engaged in this process. You can answer the survey if you are an operator, that will be sharing with you as well, that it's here in order to process your interest in terms of demand, and then also to understand if you would like to go on a purchase aggregation. This is done in the frame of the European project funded by European Commission ENTRANCE, and it's really sponsored by BIL, this Flemish cluster of logistics, and ALICE, the platform. And then for really going forward into the purchase aggregation process and procedures, we'll have advisors supporting this process. So and also for the last part of the funding, we have P&O that will support all of us. So if you are interested in knowing more on all this project and what we were discussing today, just contact us, and we'll be happy to answer to that. And really, this is my last slide. So back to you. I don't know if we have questions. Otherwise, you can take over, John, for the conclusions.
Well, thank you, Fernando. There, I don't think we've any further questions. I'd like to thank the speakers today: Thomas Fabian from ACEA, Antonio from P&O, and Fernando from Alice. I think the confusion is, I think what you saw in your survey was there's a lot of people. The big area is about confusion. Which way is the market going to go? Which is going to be the lead? We don't want to be in a situation that you've purchased one and the preferred option is the other. I think that's the big risk for a lot of people. And I think in case of some of the surveys, the the thought process by Thomas in about infrastructure and about how the way infrastructure is going to go is very important, and also Antonio, the way that the manufacturers are and the vehicles that are coming to market and where we are in terms of that market is also critical as well. So that will give us a little bit more clarity, and it's superb to get that information out there. And thanks very much to you both.